Good evening, dear students. This is masterpiece question of the topic activity-based costing versus traditional costing. Now let's begin our question. It says we have three products to make, alpha, beta, and gamma. And in order to make 1 unit of alpha, we need zero point 0.5 labor hour, 1.5 hours for beta, and 1 hour for gamma. So these are for labor hours. And the number of machine hours required for making each unit is 1.5 hour, 1 hour, and 3 machine hours. When it comes to material cost per unit, they have given us $20, $12, and $25 per unit. And the number of units to make, that's the volume of units or volume of production, 750, 1250, and 7000. That's the data given to us. Furthermore, they have given us one statement: direct labor cost $6 per labor hour. So straight away, we will be keep multiplying $6 times the number of hours required for each products. When we will be using traditional or activity-based costing, we will just straight away multiply the per unit labor cost multiplied by the number of labor hours. Okay. Now here the half of the statement says production overheads are absorbed on the basis of machine hours. So just stop it here for a while. This is traditional costing system where one single rate is applicable to all the products regardless their activities. So the machine hour is decided predetermined rate which will be used to calculate the overhead cost, and rate for one machine hour is $28 per machine hour. So that's one single rate applicable for all the products. That's traditional costing system. Furthermore, they have given us this data regarding the number of other activities associated with these products. The number of setups used in this production house are 75, 115, and 480, and the total number of setups are 670. The number of movements of documents of materials, you can see 12 documents, 21 documents, 87 documents for each of these products are required. So these are different activities. Number of inspections, I mean to say number of visits for inspections, 150, 180, and 670 inspections are required for each products, and the total number of inspections are 1000. So you can see there are different activities. When we will be using activity-based costing, we need to have each activity a separate rate. That's most appropriate one. And we call this technically cost per cost driver. You can see these are cost drivers, and we need to calculate separate cost for one cost driver. Whatever the cost driver will be, we will be multiplying the cost of each cost driver with the number of activities, like number of setups multiplied by cost per setup, number of movements multiplied by cost per movement of material. So that will be most appropriate base for the activity based costing, rather than using one single rate which is applicable for all. That's not real one. That's not true representation of costing. So let's move on to the question statement. Calculate cost per unit. Here you need to stop. What's the requirement? Cost per unit. Already they have given you per unit cost of materials for each products. Simply, when we will be calculating the cost of each product like alpha, beta, and gamma, there are three components of cost: material, labor, and overheads. Straight away, the material cost is given to us in the question 20, 12, and 25. Just copy this data from here and then paste it in the costing sheet. That's material cost per unit, labor for beta, alpha, and gamma. So that's the material cost. When it comes to labor cost, we have been given the number of labor hours for each product: half hour, 1.5, and 1 hour. And labor cost is given 6. Just put it here in the formula, is equal to half hour times $6 each. That's the cost of labor for alpha, is equal to 1.5 hour times each hour is costing us $9, is equal to 1 hour times each hour costs $6. That's $6 each. We have done two components of cost: material and labor. We are left with only one component of cost, which is overhead. And traditionally speaking, they have given us the criteria in the question statement that the production overheads are absorbed on the basis of machine hours. So number of machine hours are 1.5, 1, and 3 machine hours each product. So let's begin. The costing overheads is equal to 1.5 machine hours are required times $28 each. That's $42. And then for product beta, we need to have 1 machine hour and gamma 3 machine hours. So is equal to 1 machine hours times 28 per machine hour. And then for product gamma, 3 machines hour are required and 28 for 1 machine hour, so 84. We need to just total them is equal to sum and then use the formula of addition, simple, and that's the total cost of alpha. Same formula will be applicable for all the products, $49 per unit for beta and $115 per unit of gamma. Traditional costing system, we are done with the costing. So traditional cost per product is calculated. Now the second half of the question is a little bit critical and crucial to calculate, and we need to just comment on at each calculation at the end. So they have given us the number of cost drivers. These are cost drivers, the number of setups, number of movements of material, number of inspections. There is one more cost driver, that's the machine hours. We need to calculate that, machine hours. So how to calculate? For making 1 unit of alpha, we need 1.5 machine hours. 1.5 machine hours are required, but for alpha we need to make 750 units, so just multiply that, 750. So it means for making 1 unit of alpha we need to have 1125 machine hours required. Okay, that's calculation of number of machine hours for making alpha. For product beta, what we need to do, 1 machine hours is required and 250 units is equal to 1 hour's machine hour required times 1250 number of units. So these are the number of machine hours. For making gamma, how many hours of machines? 3 machine hours times the number of units to be made, 7,000. So 21,000 machine hours are required for gamma, because for each unit we need to have 3 machine hours to work. 7,000 units, 21,000 machine hours. You can see this is into general, so we convert it into numbers. Okay. Now you can see we have just calculated the cost of each product using traditional costing, where the overhead cost was absorbed based on the machine hours. So this was the cost per unit of alpha, beta, and gamma using traditional costing. But the examiner has given us another requirement, that calculate cost per unit of each product using activity-based costing. This is a little bit complex and a little bit difficult to calculate, because activity-based costing says we need to calculate the cost of each cost driver. So these are the cost drivers you can see. The number of setups, the number of movements of material handling, the number of inspections and machine hours. So these are the activities. What we need to do, we need to just calculate the cost of each cost driver. We have to have the cost of each cost driver, the separate cost, for which the examiner has given us the separate percentage, that out of total overhead cost, 35% belongs to setups, 20% belongs to machine, 15% belongs to material handling, and 30% belongs to inspection. So for that reason, we need to calculate the total overhead cost. So let's begin that. So total overhead cost, we have just calculated per unit $42 for alpha, and for how many number of units? 750. So just multiply 750 plus per unit overhead cost of beta was 28 times how many units? 1250. Then you can see my formula bar. Per unit cost of overhead for gamma 84 times how many units? 7,000. And then you can see my formula bar is complete. So it will be calculating the total overhead costs. We are just calculated total overhead cost. Examiner has given us the criteria and the percentage allocated to each activity. So it means traditional costing has taken this total cost and they have absorbed this total cost based on machine hours. But in the activity-based costing, what we need to do, we need to calculate cost of each cost driver, and then we will keep multiplying with the number of items of each cost driver. For example, number of setups, multiply by cost per setup, number of machine handling or machine hours, multiply by cost per machine hour, number of document handling times cost per document handling, number of inspections, multiply by cost per inspections. So let's begin the calculations. Out of this total overhead cost, 35% belongs to setup. That's 35%. Total overhead cost times 20% belongs to machine. That's machine cost. Total overhead cost times 15% belongs to material handling. And then 30% belongs to inspection. So we just calculated the separate cost of each cost driver. And the number of cost driver has already given to us the number of setups, 670. They are setups. That's the cost driver, 670. And the second cost driver was machine hour. So that's the machine hour. So we will take this as it is, 23375. So number of machine hours, 23375. Material handling. So here it is given, 120. So 120. And then inspections. Number of inspections are 1000. So just put it here. Very simple. So we are calculated cost of each activity and the cost drivers are already given. So let's calculate the cost of each cost driver. The cost divided by cost driver. You can just drag the same formula for all. It will be calculating for you the cost of each cost driver. After you have successfully calculated the cost of each cost driver, so these are the cost of each cost driver, what you need to do, you just calculate the cost of each cost driver for all the products, like number of setups, based on machines, based on material handling, based on inspections. So let's calculate that. The first was number of setups. Per setup cost was 341.90, and for product alpha, 75 setups. For product beta, 115 setups. And for product gamma, 480 setups. 75, 115, 480. The number of setups for product alpha air is 75. 75 setups times per setup cost is already calculated by us. So this is the cost driver. Enter. For beta, how many number of setups? 115 times the cost of each setup is 341.90. Just to confirm, how many setups are there? 480 setups for gamma. You can see here for 480. So product gamma is equal to 480 setups times cost of each setup. That's the activity-based costing. We are just done it. So that's the cost of each product based on setups. Now I'm going to go with the number of machine hours. With per machine hour, cost is separately calculated. For product alpha, how many machine hours are used for product alpha? Okay, just look into this. 1.5 machine hours times how many alpha products are made? 750. Multiply by cost per machine. That's the machine cost setup per unit, 6,300. Coming to the next one, beta. How many machine hours are required? You can see 1 times 1250 number of units multiplied by per machine cost, per hour machine cost, 5.0. We are just calculated this. You can see the formula is equal to the number of machine hours for gamma, 3, times the number of units times per machine hour cost, 5.60. That's it. We are just calculated for all the products the overhead cost based on machine usage. Now I'm going to go with the material handling. How many materials documents are handled for product alpha? You can see number of movements of material, 12, 21, 87. 12 multiplied by cost per material handling, 818.13. Enter. Then the number of materials handled for beta, 21 times per material handling is this rate. For product gamma, how many materials we handled? 87 times per material handling is 818.13. Lastly, we need to do just number of inspections. How many number of inspections were made for product alpha? In the data, we have been given 150 inspections. Per inspection, the cost driver is 196.35. Enter. For product beta, how many inspections were we made? 180 times per inspection cost, 196.35. For product gamma, how many inspections we made? It's here, 670 times per inspection cost, the cost driver. Okay, based on all the activities, number 4 activities, setups, machine hours, material handling, and inspections, we are just calculated the cost of each product in terms of overheads. So we need to just total of all overhead cost. Why we are totaling it? Let me tell you just a moment. This is the total overhead cost of alpha, and that's the total overhead cost of beta and gamma. The number of units to be made for product alpha 750, 1250, and 7000. And if you want to know the cost of each overhead cost of each unit, what you need to do, the total overhead cost of this product divided by the number of units. And then that's it. Drag this formula for all. Now for the activity based costing, the overhead cost of each product is most appropriately used and calculated 94 point something, 79 point something, and 69 point something. Just copy this overhead cost per unit for each product, and in the activity based costing, just paste the data. Now, if you total them, material cost is already calculated, the labor cost is already calculated, the overhead cost, we need to just paste it here now. This is not overhead cost. I need to correctly paste. This is overhead cost per unit using activity based costing. And here we have to put the data. Let me just do another way. Enter. This is overhead cost per unit for beta. This is overhead cost per unit for gamma. And if I total them, this is per unit cost of alpha, beta, and gamma. But the difference is very clear. Per unit cost of alpha using traditional costing was just 65. Now it is 117.95. Why it is so different? Because in the traditional costing, overhead cost was absorbed based on machine hours. It was not suitable. It was not logical. Now we have considered 4 different activities, and we have calculated the cost of each cost driver, and we multiplied with each cost driver, and we considered all the costs associated with the product alpha, beta, and gamma using 4 different cost drivers, this one. And then finally, we calculate the per unit overhead cost. Now you can see most appropriate using activity-based costing. So this highlighted cell in blue color, in yellow color, you can see this is the most appropriate one because it is using activity-based costing. That's it. Thank you very much. And if you have any question, you can raise.